Okay, we're talking about, I know you guys know I talk a lot about technology, but my other favorite topic is sleep. I really do love to sleep. And today we are talking with Brett McCracken, and he has a new book called The Wisdom of Sleep, How Rest Reveals God's Truth and Revives Weary Souls. Brett, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Arlene. Thanks for having me.
We have Biola University connections, as you worked for their magazine for so many years. You are now with the Gospel Coalition. You have so many books that are amazing. So please go look at Brett's books. But today we're talking specifically about sleep. And you had me at the first line. I had to think of Jerry Maguire, and you had me at hello. And your first line was, sometimes I wonder if heaven will feel a bit like an afternoon nap. I was like, yes. Oh, I like this book already. Okay, why did you start in that way?
The first lines of books are important, and they're memorable, and it says a lot about the book. So I think for me, that gets at why I'm interested in this topic. For a long time, since I was a kid, I've always felt interested in sleep as this portal to just a spiritual reality, like a connection to God, and a God who created us to sleep, and maybe there's a sense of closeness to him doing what we were created to do, which rest is a big emphasis for God. He rested on the seventh day of creation. He commands his followers to Sabbath rest, and he built in a requirement of physical rest daily in our biology. Yeah. So I've just been interested in that, and there's something interesting that happens with time when we sleep, that feeling of falling asleep for 5 minutes, but it feels like you've been dreaming and sleeping for a day or a year. And so I think there's some sort of weird relationship between eternity and time that sleep gives us a little picture of, or a taste of our eternal home.
Yeah, the feeling I got was, as I was reading your book, is, wait a minute, I thought sleep was kind of this necessity, kind of this evil physical necessity, so that I can grind it out the next day, just I need this for repair.
Yes.
But your book really, it shows the beauty of sleep, and the creator made this sleep, and kind of you ask this question, why sleep? Why did God make this? He could have made us so we didn't need to sleep. So people need to get the book to get this full answer, but give us that high overview. Why do you think, in your researching and writing this, why sleep?
Yeah. And that's the central question that drives my exploration of this topic, is that why. And it's a question that has perplexed scientists, actually, as there's still kind of not really a consensus on what the central purpose of sleep is. There's a lot of benefits, but there's also a lot of disadvantages, especially if you think about animals and how vulnerable they are to predators when they sleep. So why is it that humans and all known species of animals have to do this thing? Why do we sleep? I think some of the answers that I kind of came to in researching and writing this book is, I think God likes to create things that communicate truths about him and his character. Of course, the Bible tells us that God does this, like Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Romans 1 talks about how even pagans, have no excuse to kind of know some things about God just by looking at what he made and the design of his world. So I think God is an intentional designer, and there's things, he makes things in such a way that if you look closely and ponder them, you can kind of get to know a little bit about who God is. It's called general revelation in the Christian tradition. Special revelation, of course, Scripture, it's the most important self-revelation of God, but general revelation is the idea that in what he made, the tangible stuff of this planet, this universe, including sleep, has something to say to us. So some of the things that I think sleep says to us about who God is he's a God of grace. Sleep is a gracious gift. You receive the gifts of sleep passively. It's not something you earn, right? You can't control the benefits of sleep and like program them and dial them in. All you can do is just receive them
Lay there.
with gratitude and let you literally lay flat. And there's all these benefits that you get from sleep. So it speaks to a God of grace who delights in giving things freely of himself to his creation.
We're going to go here later in our interview, but I'm thinking about the listener that's like, I am not receiving this gift. I am struggling to sleep. So we're going to go there in a moment.
Yes.
But I want to you talked about how we are vulnerable when we're sleeping. And I thought that was so interesting that that's when danger can come and you're completely unable to do anything about it.
Yes.
Talk a little bit more about how that teaches us, like, wow, God, you are my safety. I must dwell in you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, historically, nighttime has been the most dangerous time of day. Only in modern era, like in the last 100 or so years, have we kind of tamed the perils of the night with, climate controlled homes and security systems and modern medicine. But for much of human history, nighttime was when we were at our most vulnerable, and you really needed God's protection. So you needed to pray before you went to bed, like, Lord, as I lay me down to sleep, my soul, like, you need to protect me. And so I think even though some of the dangers are less present to us today, sleep is still a vulnerable thing. And there's a lot can go wrong in the night. If you're a parent of young kids, as I am,
right,
with babies, that like nighttime can be really scary. Like when you have a sick kid, for example.
Yeah.
We had some croupy kids. And there's nothing worse than like just hearing over the monitor the like labored breathing and the barking coughs of your infant. It just reminds you that like nighttime it's when your immunity goes down. It's when your sickness revs up, and it's a time of great physical vulnerability, also spiritual vulnerability in terms of like dreams and the spiritual darkness that can sometimes enter in nightmares. So all that to say, I think sleep is a good opportunity for all of us to just be reminded that we need a protector. We need God's sovereignty to watch over us. And he does watch over us. He keeps watch in the night. Psalm 121 beautifully reminds us of that when it says, like, he who keeps Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. He is the one that stays up while we sleep. And we can sleep easier because he doesn't sleep, because he keeps the world going. He is always on watch, always alert. And so for me, sleep is just a nightly reminder that I can rest in the sovereignty of God and relax in the sovereignty of God.
What a beautiful way to frame that, because every day we can have this reminder. Every 7 days we have this reminder through Sabbath rest. That is a commandment, for keep the Sabbath. So God is telling us, rest, my child, rest. And so even if you're listening to this podcast and your takeaway is, when I lay in bed today, I'm going to say, Lord, thank you. You are sovereign. I accept your gift of rest today. Instead of tossing and turning and worrying about your life, like, that's going to be a huge, huge benefit. Okay, you have 4 kids, 8 and under, including a baby. So you're. I just want listeners to know that you are from the real world realm of parents who have a hard time sleeping.
Yes.
Right. What are some sleep tips that you can give us as adults, and then for children?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of my tips are going to be pretty common knowledge to a lot of listeners, but like, I think both with kids and for adults, like some sort of wind down period before sleep is really important. You're probably not going to get a good sleep, and your kids aren't going to get a good sleep if you're like manic, like doing, hyper productive up until like bedtime. So whether it's like with your kids, like having some reading time, having some quiet time as the day ends, I think that's good. As adults, I really don't recommend like being on your computer or your phone right up until the moment you go to bed. There's a lot of science that's actually backing that up, that screen light as well as screen content, which often makes us kind of anxious and stressed, doesn't do good things for our sleep. So try to have screen-free, slow down rhythms, relaxing time right up until you sleep. Another tip that is pretty commonly known, but it's really important, as I read like the Science of Sleep books, is just a regular rhythm of going to bed and waking up at the same time every day. Our bodies are wired to kind of do better with like predictable rhythms. And if you kind of have an erratic schedule, which I understand some people can't help that if you're a shift worker or something like that, but to the extent that it's within your control, like try to go to bed at the same time every day and wake up at the same time. That will actually do wonders for the quality of your sleep. And a couple other ones would just be the obvious, like things to avoid right before bed, like stimulants, like alcohol or really intense workouts right before bed, things that kind of elevate your hormone levels and whatnot. Avoid that. And I think on just a spiritual level, something that I talk about in the book, when in the dreams chapter, there's two chapters on dreams, but the content of our dreams, which can often make our sleep really restless and disruptive, if it's like dark nightmares, it really does depend on the inputs of your day. And so if let's say you're watching like a scary movie right before bed, like don't be surprised if you don't have a great night's sleep because your dreams are troubled by those late in the day inputs. So to the extent that you can like control the inputs in your mind, that can help your quality of sleep. And I know that you can't avoid all of that. Being an adult in today's world, being a parent, there's just a lot of scary, stressful stuff that is just par for the course in life. But you can control some of it. So don't watch horror movies right before bed.
Yeah.
Don't read scary headlines on news websites right before you go to bed. Don't scroll on Instagram and let the algorithm like put some sort of like troubling thing in your mind right before you go to bed. Read scripture, read like physical books that are like things that can calm your mind. A lot of the quality of sleep is mental, actually. Like there's a lot of science that shows like the mental stress and anxiety you carry into sleep can affect your sleep quality. So,
and that's a choice you can make. I recently read the same thing of like, pretty much the worst thing you can do is just be scrolling on your social media because it's, constant stimulation. You're all looking, it's anxiety ridden, it's fear ridden. So, if you have to do something, then listen to this podcast and we will lull you to sleep as you have it a few feet away from you and just listen to our voices. But the content really matters, like what you are, and do it the same with your children. If you find like, oh, my kids are saying they have nightmares or my kids are having trouble sleeping, it's like, what are they watching during the day? What might they be watching that you don't know about? Right. How can you limit that environment? Because that's really going to help them sleep better as well. It's so interesting when you were talking about nighttime, how it used to be a dangerous thing. Mm-hmm. And don't you think now it's so dangerous because of what we do in our bedrooms with our phones?
For sure.
And we think as parents, oh, they're safe. They're like in our house. Everything's fine. There's not a burglar in here. We don't have famine. We don't have a wild animal running through our house. But it's like, oh my goodness, they're sitting with their phone. And talk a little bit about that I can't help but think, wow, the night is so dangerous, that toxic trio of darkness, being alone, and your technology.
No, you're totally right. And it reminds me of what Jonathan Haidt says in his book, The Anxious Generation, about how we now underprotect kids in the virtual world, but we overprotect them in the real world.
Yeah.
So we're helicopter parents when it comes to how far we let them ride their bikes outside, but we let them do anything they want on their devices in their rooms. But that, Jonathan Haidt is arguing, and I agree, is actually the most damaging to them on a mental health level, on a spiritual level, because the things that they can get into and find online are very dark. And, you like to give your kids the benefit of the doubt, but like teenagers especially are hormonal creatures. They're rebellious. They will find their way to some pretty dark stuff. So I think it's really important for parents to be sober-minded and alert to all that can go wrong in the nighttime if your kid has access to the internet and smartphones. You're so right. That's like the new peril of the night.
Yes.
200 years ago, it was like fires and like the plague in the night, but now it's the internet.
What a funny like comic that would be, like, 1,000 years ago, and you see all these creatures and awful fires and pillaging, whatever. And here you see this kid on a bed holding a phone
in their face.
Yes. Yeah. And, here you are writing about the wisdom of sleep, and so many of our children's issues could be solved by a good night's sleep on most days of the week. That could solve a lot of problems. My husband used to tell me, because I'm not very athletic, my husband's very active, athletic. He likes, skiing and all these different things I really have a hard time doing. But he'll tell me, if sleeping were an Olympic sport, you could win, dear, because I can just like sleep through things. I love my naps. I write books and have children, but I do it while I'm awake, and I don't sacrifice my sleep for it. Getting back to this idea of getting a good night's sleep now is countercultural. Like, people are not doing this. John Piper, you quote him in the book. You write, he said, and you quote this: God sends us to bed each night like patients who are ill with a sickness. The sickness is a chronic tendency to think we are in control and that our work is indispensable. Yeah. To cure us of this disease, God turns us into helpless sacks of sand once a day.
I love that. Yeah.
Right?
Isn't that a great book?
Yeah. Talk about how this is a good corrective to us being overworking, over hustling, over, going nuts over here.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is kind of one of those answers to the question of why would God create us to sleep? I think in his wisdom, he knew that we're prone to pride, and we're prone in our nature to overestimate our self-importance and to think we need to be always on, and we can't get away with turning off and stopping working because we are, it's just our sinful nature. But sleep is a genius kind of putting us in our place device, because it forces us to succumb to the reality that the world goes on without us every night. We don't actually have to finish the to-do list that we set out for each day. It's not going to be the end of the world. And in fact, going to bed and receiving all the benefits, all the restorative benefits that sleep provides, is the best thing we can do for the next day's productivity. So that's the thing that science is really discovering recently about sleep, and why a lot of people in the health and fitness industry are now emphasizing sleep so much. Even like professional athletes, like you hear a lot of them talk about how much they prioritize sleep, because the science is clear that their performance athletically is deeply connected to their sleeping life. I think in the technological world we live in, the temptation is greater than ever to produce all the time, to always be optimizing every moment with your phone, with the ability to check email and do work at 11 o'clock at night when you should be going to bed. The technology is tempting us to overestimate the need for us to be awake, the need for us to just keep checking things off the list and to keep hustling and grinding things out. And I just think that we need to be countercultural in this moment, in this cultural moment, as Christians, especially people who really can rest in God's sovereignty, rest in his provision and his abundance. We of all people should set the example of work hard in the waking hours, do good work, but then turn off and accept the fact that God, he wants us to rest in his provision and not overestimate our need. I tell the story of the Israelites and the manna, from the Bible, when God tells them, don't collect manna on Sabbath, right? But some of them just can't do that. They're so worried about their need to procure food. They don't trust in God's provision, and so they break that commandment. And I think those who like don't prioritize sleep and can't bring themselves to Sabbath are doing the same thing. It really stems from an over realized sense of your own importance, and the belief that you might have that your livelihood or your family's livelihood depends on you more than it depends on the goodness and grace of God. And that's tempting. I mean, it's easy to fall into that. Like, I'm a dad, I fall into that myself.
Yeah.
I always have to like check my heart and try to like reframe my perspective that like, no, like everything my family has comes from God. Like, their health and livelihood depends on Him more than me. And in fact, if they see me modeling that, that's the best gift I can give to them. If I model a kind of peaceful presence resting in the goodness and sovereignty of God, that's something that they will hopefully imitate in their lives. So that's why I wrote the book for myself, just to kind of
totally
remember these things.
I have so many questions after what you just said. Okay, let's start here. The thought being, wow, when I do nothing, that's when God is like, that's makes me productive the next day. And then how beautiful, that's the Lord. It's like, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, I'm going to sanctify you. You rest.
Yeah.
And the more you rest, the more productive and fruitful you will be if you rest in me. I think of the rise of the energy drink. Like it's because we all want to keep staying awake. When you and I were growing up, there was just maybe Jolt. I remember Jolt was like this energy, like soda, but there was just like one kind. Now obviously have all these energy drinks that people are drinking because they're not going to sleep at night.
Yeah.
How has this book affected like you, your wife, your children? Has it affected just that rhythm of sleep in any way?
Yeah, this has been like...
Except for your baby, perhaps.
Yeah, having a baby, there's only so much you can do to like get good sleep. Thankfully, he has been a decent sleeper, so we're grateful for that. But yeah, I think it's really just reminded me that like it's not as important that I get everything done. There's no end. You know this too. Like, there's no end to the list of things that you want to accomplish each day. Like, I rarely go to bed like having reached inbox zero, they call it.
Yeah.
I've given up trying to do that. Like,
right.
And so I'm going to prioritize sleeping rather than getting everything done. And sometimes that means waiting until the morning to do the dishes if the sink is full of dishes. Sometimes it means not responding to a text or an email that I haven't had time to respond to. And it's just like, it's a choice, right? It's something that you have to be intentional about because it's so easy to just sideline sleep. It's like, okay, I'll go to sleep when I can. And sometimes there are things like in my work as a journalist for the Gospel Coalition, there's deadlines for like articles, and I have a short turnaround time. So every now and then I have to stay up late to like finish an article, and that's okay as long as it's not like becoming a regular thing. Yeah. But I always feel it the next day. Like you always feel worse when you wake up in the morning and you have gotten less sleep than you need. And your watch reminds you, we have these watches now that tells you like, you had a poor sleep last night.
You're like, no kidding.
I'm like, no kidding. Thank you for that reminder, for guilting me about that. But yeah, I think it's a choice, and I'm having to just choose it every day. And even though I wrote this book on sleep, I'm not the perfect practitioner of it. Sometimes I don't go to bed as early as I should. And I'm trying to practice what I preach. That's what we all need to do especially if we're writers and communicating about these things. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. Let's talk about AI and why sleep could really be this neat thing to show us humans need sleep. In this age where the lines are going to be blurred, and it's going to become what is a human and how is this machine different? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the AI moment that we're in is like a major like disruption. It's like the
Yeah.
beginning of a whole new era, I think.
Yes, I agree.
And yeah, and I think part of the timing of me writing a book about sleep is tied to that because I do think AI is introducing in a new kind of a newly urgent way the question, what does it mean to be human?
Mhm.
As AI begins to like do a lot of skills that we used to think were only the domain of humans, and I know this very well. It's close to home for me as a writer
Yeah.
because I can already see how AI might put me out of a job because it can write in a very powerful way. So it's even forcing me to think about like as a creator, as a
Yeah.
writer, like what is the uniquely human contribution that I can make? And as I think about those questions of like what makes humans different, I think limitation is a big part of that. Like part of our humanity is the fact that God intentionally created us to not be limitless, to not be able to be infinite like He is.
Yeah.
Right? He's the creator. We are the creatures. There's a vast chasm between creator and creatures. And whenever humans have gotten tempted to want to be like God, that's where they get into trouble. It was Adam and Eve's original sin in the Garden
Yeah.
of Eden. They didn't want to have limitations. They wanted to be infinite like God. And I think AI and other technologies today are presenting that same temptation to us in a really powerful way. Like you can have omniscience like God. That's what AI promises.
Yeah.
It's like infinite knowledge, any question you're curious about, AI can give you instant insight into that. You know, the internet has already given us the illusion of omnipresence. You know, you can like be zooming as we are, you know, with someone on the other side of the world. You can, you know, be in multiple places at once. And so all of these technologies are kind of expressions of that same original temptation to want to transcend our creaturely limits that God placed in our very design. And so I think wisdom comes by embracing the limits, like, and I think we would do well as humans in the age of AI to be clear that like we are nothing like machines. We actually do turn off and it's good for us. And it's not all about just producing and optimizing. Humans also believe in grace and this kind of gratuitous nature of life. Like things are more beautiful than they need to be, and machines can't think that way. AI thinks practically and efficiently, and that's another difference between humans and AI. An AI would never be able to see the beauty in something like sleep, but humans can, and that's what my book is trying to get at. So yeah, so I think it's a timely topic for us to contemplate in this technological moment.
I remember years ago, we were doing like a day hike in the Rocky Mountains, and my husband loves to bring his little hammock. And like his favorite feeling is hiking, you know, for 2 hours and then putting a hammock between two trees and laying there. He just loves that so much.
That's the best.
And I think that is what AI cannot do. You know, that doesn't need to do. It doesn't understand that, but something uniquely human. And it's funny because you could see like a little comic strip be almost mockable, like this is what AI can't do. And it's like someone curled up taking a nap, and you know, it's kind of mocking because the person can't keep working, but your AI can keep working. But instead of a negative, that's a positive. So it's like someone in a really snuggy outfit sleeping, and how wonderful that is.
Right.
You have helped us enjoy sleep more and think of the theology of sleep by thinking, wow, God created this and all that He created was good, and that this is something good for us. Thank you so much for writing this about one of my favorite subjects of sleep. How can people find out more about you and your book, The Wisdom of Sleep?
Oh, thank you. It's been a fun conversation. So you can buy the book on Amazon or anywhere you buy books. And then you can find out more about me and my other books and my writing at brettmccracken.com.
Thank you so much for your time and your expertise and wisdom, Brett. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Arlene. Thanks.